Hi, welcome back to Remember Books. Today's Remember Books I'm going to entitle Let's Talk About Holes, which is by Louis Sachar, Newbery Medal winner, same guy that brought you Wayside School and several other fun books. This is, I can say without a doubt, one of my favorite books of all time. It's about some kids digging holes in the desert. It's about a curse that is generations old. It's about forbidden love. It's about fixing the mistakes of your forefathers. It's about mountains. It's about onions. This book has it all. I first read it in fourth grade with my fourth grade class. Our teacher, Mr. K, read it to us. Shout out to Mr. K. Thank you so much for introducing me to my favorite book in the world. And then the next year, a different teacher also wanted to read Holes with us. And he was saying, well, what are your predictions? What do you think is going to happen in this novel? And we all said, oh, I think I know. After that, I don't think we read it with any more teachers, but it sparked a pattern for me, and I now reread Holes almost every year, sometimes more than once a year. And every time, like the best books that you have, it reveals something new to me. There's something new in it that I can latch on to, especially as an adult now, because again, it's one of those books starring middle schoolers. And when you're a middle schooler and you're reading it, you think, oh, these kids are so grown up. There's so much going on more adventures than me. And then as an adult, you look at them and you're like, they're kids. Why are they digging holes in the desert? But you relate more to, for instance, characters like Sam and Catherine who are now your age. And so you sort of latch onto their parts of the story. I imagine that once I'm a little older, I'll start to find different things that I'm interested in this book. It's it's just a very thorough story. Um, Everything in it is introduced so neatly. It's shared so cleanly. The language is very simple, but it's very direct. There's not a lot of, I don't want to say Hemingway-esque because Hemingway and Louis Sachar are very different people, but it's written so that children can understand it. And it's also just such a clean, sharp, funny writing style. Everything about it is deliberate. I think it's one of the most technically perfect books that I've ever read. All of the things that are brought up in it come back in some very important way later on, and it's just endlessly fascinating to me every time I read it to watch, to see that play out. It was made into a very excellent movie that you probably remember. Shia LaBeouf was Stanley in it, and that's a very charming, cute little movie, and I think you should check it out if you haven't already seen it. It came out in like 2004, I want to say, sometime around then. So, it's a little bit older, but so is the book. The book came out in 1999, which I didn't realize until a couple years ago when I was reading it. And 1998, 1998, this book came out. But that's another one of its charms is that it's almost impossible to tell, aside from the fact that the kids don't have cell phones or that, recent popular culture isn't mentioned in it. That almost helps give it that timeless vibe because there is no mention of whatever popular culture is current at the time that the characters are doing their thing. So it can't feel dated. They're out in a desert digging holes, so whatever modern conveniences they don't have can be explained that way. And I think that adds to why it feels so technically perfect to me, because there's very little room in this book for anything to feel old or feel dated. It feels timeless. And it makes me happy every time I read it. So I'll read a little bit of it for you today as part of our Remember Books. I'll start with that iconic first chapter. I think I'll do chapter 2 as well because the chapters in Holes are very short. They're all like between a page and 5 pages long, which makes it, again, a very easy read. It's like 200 pages long. All the chapters are short. It's a great book to read aloud with someone. You can share the chapters, you can share the experience of it, and it's small bites. So it's manageable. So let's get started. Part 1. You are entering Camp Green Lake. Chapter 1. There is no lake at Camp Green Lake. There once was a very large lake here, the largest lake in Texas. That was over 100 years ago. Now it is just a dry, flat wasteland. There used to be a town of Green Lake as well. The town shriveled and dried up along with the lake and the people who lived there. During the summer, the daytime temperature hovers around 95 degrees in the shade, if you can find any shade. There's not much shade in a big dry lake. The only trees are two old oaks on the eastern edge of the lake. A hammock is stretched between the two trees, and a log cabin stands behind that. The campers are forbidden to lie in the hammock. It belongs to the warden. The warden owns the shade. Out on the lake, rattlesnakes and scorpions find shade under rocks and in the holes dug by the campers. Here's a good rule to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions. If you don't bother them, they won't bother you. Usually. Being bitten by a scorpion or even a rattlesnake is not the worst thing that can happen to you. You won't die. Usually. Sometimes a camper will try to be bitten by a scorpion or even a small rattlesnake. Then he will get to spend a day or two recovering in his tent instead of having to dig a hole out on the lake. But you don't want to be bitten by a yellow-spotted lizard. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. You will die a slow and painful death. Always. If you are bitten by a yellow-spotted lizard, you may as well go into the shade of the oak trees and lie in the hammock. There is nothing anyone can do to you anymore. Chapter 2. The reader is probably asking, why would anyone go to Camp Green Lake? Most campers weren't given a choice. Camp Green Lake is a camp for bad kids. If you take a bad kid and make him dig a hole every day in the hot sun, it will turn him into a good kid. That was what some people thought. Stanley Yelnats was given a choice. The judge said, you may go to jail or you may go to Camp Green Lake. Stanley was from a poor family. He had never been to camp before. And like I say, that's a heck of a first chapter to start. That's the end of chapter 2. It's like a paragraph long. And then you get into chapter 3 and Stanley's arrival, and the chapters get a bit longer. So I won't read those. But this is another thing about it, is it's one of those books that's very easy to find because it is used in school curriculum so often. So I'm like 90% sure it's on Libby, which is Overdrive. Libby is the app. If not, Philadelphia Free Library probably has it. It might even be public domain now. I don't know if it is. I think that usually takes a bit longer, but it's probably possible to find a free copy somewhere. Like Libby or Overdrive, the Philadelphia Free Library, online libraries like that. And then you too can enjoy the magic of holes. Yeah, I think that's a bit. If I say any more, I will talk for 5 hours. So, Holes. Please read it. I love it. Thank you. Goodbye.